good lunch? Oh, amazing, amazing. We're so happy to have you back. As the video would have just displayed, the awards extension for the Commonwealth Youth Awards has been granted. And so we've extended the deadline to the 31st of this month. So if you know someone who is worthy of these awards, worthy of the funding that is accompanying the awards, please encourage them to apply. Now that we are well fed and we have been energized, we are now ready to continue with the rest of our afternoon sessions. And before we do that, I want to invite someone of outstanding importance, someone who is a champion of young people, who has been with us from the very start. I first met her some months ago in London, and she completely blew me away with her passion for young people, with her fervor for empowering the next generation. And we're so honored to have her here. She is the Community and Social Development Minister, as well as the Minister for Women. Please help me to welcome the Minister, or host. Put your hands together, please. Encouragement, yes. Please help me welcome the Minister, the Honourable Motopawa Alawayom, the MP, and she's the Minister for Women, Community and Social Development. Minister, please.
Talofa lava. Say talofa. I can feel the energy here in the room. And this is youth. Well, talofa lava and warm greetings to you all. It is my great privilege to welcome you to the Commonwealth Youth Forum 2024, where we gather under the theme, Navigating Our Course, Building Resilience for a Common Future. This forum is a clear demonstration of the critical role that young people play in shaping both the present and the future of our nations. Samoa has long been committed to the empowerment of its youth. And I am proud to announce that this commitment was recently strengthened through the Cabinet-endorsed Samoa Youth Advisory Board. Can you give a clap? Which will play a vital role in informing the government's policies on youth development. The establishment of this board ensures that the voices of our youth are not just heard, but are actively shaping the decision that will guide our future. Many of the members of the board are here with us today, alongside representatives from faith-based, sporting, and community organizations, all working toward the same goal, to build a brighter future for our youth. Why youth now? Because the challenges we face today, from climate change to economic instability, demand fresh perspectives, bold ideas, and innovative solutions. And there is no better group equipped to lead us through these challenges than our young people. You are not just the leaders of tomorrow, you are the leaders of today. Your creativity, energy, and determination are the driving forces that will help us navigate the complexities of the world we live in. This forum is more than just a space for discussions. It is a space for action. As youth leaders, you are stepping into roles that require you to make real changes, not only in your communities, but across the Commonwealth. Your leadership in areas like climate action, Digital innovation and economic empowerment is crucial to building resilience and securing a future that is inclusive and sustainable for all. We understand that to create effective and lasting change, the perspectives of young people must be integrated into every decision we make. Your voices will shape our national agenda on youth development, education, and economic growth. But leadership requires more than just bold ideas. It requires support and collaboration. As the Samoan proverb says, "Ele sili letai, nailo letapuai." Victory is not greater than the support behind it. We as governments, communities, and global citizens must stand together with our youth, providing the resources, platforms, and partnerships necessary to transform your ideas into impactful decisions. Over the next few days, your discussion will tackle real-world issues like climate change, digital innovation, and economic empowerment, with the potential to shape not only your communities, but the future of the entire Commonwealth. Samoa is honored to join the Commonwealth Ministerial Task Force. I encourage each of you to lead with purpose, collaborate with one another, and push the boundaries of what is possible. This is your moment. On behalf of Samoa, I welcome you to this critical forum and to this moment of youth leadership. Together, we are navigating the future with confidence, strength, and unity. Whawhetaite le lava, and may the work we do here inspire action that are bold and lasting change for a generation to come. Soifua Mayamanuia.
And so I'm going to hand over to Petronella, who will guide us now into our next spotlight session.
Thank you, Najee. I don't know about you, but I'm ready to dive into inspiring stories. Given that all the discussions that we've been having this morning, it's very encouraging as we're moving. Now we are spotlighting and showcasing youth action in the Asia region. For Mr. Caleb. Caribbean. Oh, Caribbean. Okay.
The rules on fire. Follow the leader.
So to happen, we are now spotlighting the Caribbean region. Give a round of applause to the Caribbean region.
The rules
for Mr.
on
Caleb.
fire. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow me. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Hands up, down, up, down. Everybody now, put your hand in the air. One hand in the air, and we go from left to right. Watch this. Left, right, left, right. Come on.
going to dive into a topic that affects each and every single one of us. How young people are reshaping the future of resilience.
And wave, everybody come. Follow the leader, 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 follow the leader. Follow the leader, 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 follow the leader. Follow the leader, 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 follow the leader.
And so, to lead us into that exciting conversation, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce our next moderator for Plenary 3, someone who knows a thing or two firsthand about amplifying youth voices and driving climate action. Oklani, where are you? Perfect. Please give her a round of applause. Thank you. Now, the session will explore the vital role of youth in combating the climate emergency. And in talking about that, we're going to talk about the emergency climate action, investment, green technologies, and sustainable practices. In my country, we have an expression that encourages sweetness flavor. So please don't give our welcome. The next person that we're going to call upon is going to be an environmental Angelina. We also have the manager of the Pacific Climate Change Center in the Secretariat of the Pacific Environment Program, Ofa Masi Kasame. Ofa, are you here? Oh, perfect. Ofa is on her way. We also have someone from the Pacific Resilience Partnership Youth Network, Sabalone. Okay, I see in good time. And lastly, but by no means least, we have the incoming Vice Chairperson for Policy and Advocacy of the Commonwealth Youth Council, Mr. Khalid Kutia. Okalani is one of the driving forces behind accessible mental health and resources in Indigenous relationships here in Samoa. And so she's also a powerful advocate of climate justice and spoken word as well as poetry. So we're in for a truly special session. So without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to Okalani and hand over the session to her.
Thank you, Najee. Just going to quickly do a quick mic check. Mic check, testing 1, 2. All right, good afternoon, everyone, and warm Pacific greetings. Unfortunately, not only am I tasked with starting my session at the hottest hour of the day, I am also unfortunately placed right after lunch. So I know a lot of you might be feeling a little drowsy or sleepy, and it is quite muggy. So I do ask that you bear with us because I think this specific plenary is one that we've been really looking forward to. I think climate change has been a really large topic in the Commonwealth Youth Forum, and so for this specific plenary, I'm really looking forward to hearing from experts. But one thing I did want to mention before we do start our plenary, and I give the floor as well to our speakers to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about the amazing work they do. I was reflecting on our gathering here today. And so for everyone's context, the Commonwealth Heads of Government meetings, there are currently 3 being run in parallel. So there's the People's Forum, there's the Women's Forum, and there's the Youth Forum. Of those 3 forums, the youth is the only one that is not fully air conditioned. So while we are sitting in the muggy heat, I was actually thinking about it and how poetic is how I would describe it to be, because it's very funny that the Youth Forum is the only forum with no air conditioning, where the youth are currently dreaming of solutions to limit global warming, to limit temperatures, and also to dream of a future where we are leading. And I think it is actually an interesting reflection of the dialogue we're going to be having as well, because as people are dreaming up solutions in fully air-conditioned spaces, and it's not necessarily about the air conditioning, but we are sitting in discomfort, and we are sitting in heat, and we are still happy to dream. And I think it is a beautiful reflection of us gathering here today, of the youth gathering, and of the desire to change, and of the desire to not see a future where our temperatures continue to rise and continue to get hotter and hotter, but limited. But also, if that is, we are still dialoguing, we are still creating solutions, and we are still dreaming up a world where we will be leaders. Bear with me, I also haven't had my afternoon coffee. But yeah, I think I just wanted to encourage you as you sit in the heat, although it is distracting, to really let it sink in and feel the stickiness, because that discomfort is also a reflection of the conversations we have to have in order to really create solutions. And when we sit in this discomfort, do we want it to change? And how do we create those changes? Do we talk to our government heads of leaders? Do we become the better leaders? Or do we make sure that that change happens from within us? So yes, it is my honor to now hand over the mic, and thank you once again, Najee and Nilla, for introducing my incredible panel of speakers. But just in the interest of time, I'm going to invite our first speaker here, the Honorable Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Sport, Youth and National Services for the Government of Namibia, to introduce herself and also talk about the work. I think youth and climate are so intersectional, and I think there are different ways in which we can advocate for that space, whether it's in policy, whether it's in gathering, or whether it's in creative arts. But I've always been interested to hear more about how other people are really mobilizing youth. So I'd like to hand over the mic to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, moderator. I now understand why we are sitting here without aircons. I didn't understand why in the beginning. It's an honor for me to be here today, and more specifically to discuss issues that affect us in terms of climate change. And as we gather to discuss the critical role that the young people are involved in to address this climate crisis that we are faced with, it's imperative for us to share best practice, and as Namibia, we are equally committed to ensure that the role of young people come out prominently in fighting this crisis. Before I start sharing what we are doing as Namibia, I just want to share with the audience that at the recently concluded United Nations General Assembly 79, I'm sure you've followed that there was a pact that was adopted at the margins of the Summit of the Future. Now, Namibia and Germany co-chaired the facilitation of this pact. And so when you look at what the heads of governments have pledged in that pact, action number 9 speaks to that we will strengthen our actions to address climate change. So for us as Namibia, we are committed to driving implementation of this pact. Now, in Namibia, we have several youth-led initiatives that speaks to advocating for climate change crisis that we are faced with, because we know that this is one of our greatest challenges of our time. We do have young people who are advocating for climate change initiatives, such as Youth for CAN. It's an organization that's led by youth. And NAYORE, we have also one organization, Women in Agriculture, who are at the forefront, implementing practical solutions in renewable energy and sustainable agriculture. And recently we hosted the National Youth Climate Change Summit. I'm highlighting this just to show that we are really working towards addressing the climate change issues, and in terms of the efforts that young people are putting in to ensure that these are not just talks, but they are at the forefront. So those are some of the initiatives that our young people are engaged in. But as a Ministry of Youth, Sport and National Service, we also have different initiatives that empower young people. And one of them that I want to mention is the social empowerment, where you want to position young people to be catalysts of change in their society. And if you're talking about change, obviously climate change is one of those crises that we are dealing with. In short, I think I'll stop there. And I would rather want to engage more than talking, because I do value the voices of young people. And moderator, I'll just end here and take it on further.
No, thank you so much, Honorable Minister. I think I really liked what you were talking about in terms of social empowerment. I think when we think about leadership, it's always sometimes so broad, so high and so great, but they don't really think about grassroots. And I think the greatest leaders and the leaders who lead well are often the ones that serve in the small things. And so with social empowerment being a centermost part, I'm really looking forward to diving into that more. But also our next speaker is Angelique, who is an environmental lawyer from Seychelles. And I think as a small island state as well, you have that desire for social impact, but also with youth and climate litigation being something that you're really passionate about, and you're talking about the future of environmental law. I also think that's so important, not only social empowerment, but empowering youth to be more in the decision-making spaces. And I'd love to hear more about that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak to the Youth Forum. So I, back in 2015, was sitting in the audience at the CHOGM Youth Forum in Malta. So it's really nice to be back amongst young people and to continue listening to your voices, because I think now I'm a little bit over the age limits that the Commonwealth places. So to the point about climate litigation, and I think it's great to be in the Pacific to talk about climate litigation, right? Given that the Pacific has mobilized, organized, developed a strategy, and today we actually have an advisory opinion going to the International Court of Justice talking about state obligations on climate change. But really, no one wants to start with litigation, right? We want to start with dialogue. We want to be able to converse with our governments, have a lot of transparency, hold each other accountable, have a good dialogue. And for that, I say we need to demand governments to think beyond election cycles. I know it's hard, but we need to think beyond election cycles. It's starting to feel a bit like a double intergenerational injustice when governments are taking out debt, but then investing that money in things that are harmful to our future, into activities that are quite destructive to our future and having negative climate impacts. So I'd say let's start the dialogue. Let's talk about investing in renewable energy, investing in building resilience and climate adaptation, committing to protecting our ocean within and beyond national jurisdictions, and of course sustainably managing our resources. But before I let that point go, of course, sometimes dialogue doesn't work. Sometimes we need to turn to litigation. And whilst I applaud all the efforts of the youth on the front lines in the local community, I also say that the beauty of the Commonwealth is having young people who are also from the UK, who are also from Australia, who are also from Canada, and I ask them to hold their governments accountable. Take their governments to court as well. And there's been some really great cases, and there's been some really great cases where they've done that. Let's build networks, let's be allies, and actually get this sorted, because the only way we're going to be able to do this is through a global youth movement. So with that, I say thank you.
Thank you so much. Round of applause. Oh, I got so excited just listening to you, because I so strongly resonate with the idea that litigation is so crucial. I think as small island states and Pacific nations, specifically Samoa, we're so passionate about bringing emotion and feeling back into the conversations, because litigation is not easy. It is very dark, and it can be very difficult sometimes to stay hopeful. But I also really do agree to emphasize that although we as small island states want to push creative spaces, it is also important for us to push for bigger countries, bigger Commonwealth brothers and sisters, to push for their government to change the litigation. So I love that so much. And on that note, I would like to invite my Pacific sister, Ofa Kaisami, manager at the Pacific Climate Change Center of SPREP, OFA is one of the trailblazers, actually, who have helped shape climate conversations in the Pacific. And I really wanted to hear your insights and how you've been building climate resilience through youth engagement and youth initiatives as well through SPREP.
Malo Pito, and thank you, Okalani. And let me first acknowledge our ministers that are in the room, our high-level delegates, but also our youth delegates that are here. Also my co-panelists that are here today. Great question. Actually, I walked through the door and I am looking for people like me, and I was so empowered. I was so inspired as soon as I walked into this room, because this platform is a powerful platform in the context of climate change. I usually start off with just sending a message. So the message is climate change has increased level of uncertainty about the future, about your future as youth, about the future of our children. And the impacts as conveyed by the IPCC report, it will intensify over time. That is one thing that is certain, that our youth and our children will inherit the earth from us. And that earth, we need to do something. In the context of climate change and the work of SPREP, as introduced by Ms. Moderator, my name is Ofa, and I work for the Secretariat of the Regional Environment Program, or SPREP. In particular, I manage the Pacific Climate Change Center. The work that we do at the Pacific Climate Change Center is actually on 4 key thematic areas, and one is on capacity building and development. This Tuesday, we were fortunate to host the youth delegates for Samoa for CHOGM. But beyond that, we've also hosted our Samoa Fafafin and Fatama. We also hosted the Brown Girl Walk, which is a NGO that looks after young people and young women. We also had the opportunity to be engaged and fund some of your youth delegates to COP. And that is the work of SPREP through the Pacific Climate Change Center. It's really utilizing the platform for advocacy. I think youth is a powerful platform in the context of advocating for addressing impacts of climate change. In terms of the work of SPREP and the Pacific Climate Change Center on empowerment and youth for long-term climate resilience, we have a capacity building program in place. And I always advocate, and I always come across the Miss Pacific Islands, I think she's sitting somewhere here, who has been a true champion as well of youth, but also utilizing her platform as the Miss of Pacific to pressure, I guess, organizations like the Pacific Climate Change Center and SPREP to do something in the space. And so I always, I believe in awareness, in utilizing your platform, because I think there is a lot of energy there. If you're looking for change, this is the Agent of Change platform, the youth, the students. And so we are very fortunate to host some of the youth initiatives, youth-led initiatives in climate change. We also, you spoke about education, and as part of building up to the submission of Vanuatu through our youth platform, we hosted the Young Pacific Leaders, where we were discussing on our contribution as an organization who's mandated in the space to lead on climate change. And those are the little initiatives, but I think it will go a long way, Okalani. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ofa. And for the context of those who are not familiar with the Pacific region, SPREP actually plays such a vital role in supporting our countries and our governments in conversations when it comes to litigation at that government level. So if you see a Pacific Islander at COP, they're most likely supported or know somebody in SPREP. And so with SPREP being in Samoa, it is such a huge privilege that we get to learn and draw from them as we go. And I do hope and encourage, if you are interested in working with the climate space in Pacific, to reach out to SPREP, because they have all the information you need about that. But I'm so glad you did bring up climate resilience and youth leadership really being at the center of climate resilience, because the next person I would like to welcome is Sevuloni, who also works in the same space. But Sevuloni is from the Pacific Resilience Partnership Youth Network in Fiji, and he's probably really familiar with a lot of the conversations we're having right now. But the work that he does is around youth leadership in climate resilience, as well as the importance of empowering young people to actively participate in the decision-making processes, advocacy, as well as sustainability efforts. So I would love to hear more about how he is really championing that within his network in Fiji.
Thank you, moderator. Well, first of all, Mbula Vinaka. It's great to be in Samoa, and firstly I would like to acknowledge the presence of our honorable ministers and senior officials from the line ministries for youth and sports, national delegates, and also invited guests to the 2 days youth forum. As our moderator have mentioned, if I may respond to that question, I firmly believe that we have some great examples of youth leadership in the resilient space in the Pacific. I doubt some of you will not agree with that. And I can see some of our great youth leaders who are present in this room, who have been championing, leading, advocacy and support, and even when it comes to projects at the regional level and also at the country level, in terms of climate resilience. And I would like to allude to my colleague from SPREP. She had mentioned, why we are doing work in this space. Recently, the United Nations released a report, the UNSG, in August of this year, that continue to prove and indicate the real impact of climate change. I think the report was titled Sea Level Rise, recently released, if you may or if you may have not seen that. And if I bring it closer to the region, we have some structures and processes in place that brings together governments, development partners, donors, academias, including youth, in building a resilient Pacific. Some of you might have heard of the FRDP, or the Framework of Resilience Development in the Pacific, which is supported by the Pacific Resilience Partnership, which was endorsed by Pacific Island Forum leaders in one of their meetings. So the FRDP is an integrated approach to addressing both climate change and disaster risk management and low carbon. So in this space, youth play an active role. The platform is supported by our crop agencies, the Pacific Island Forum Secretariat, SPREP, the Pacific Community, SPC, and other crop agencies. So it's a Pacific-led initiative that brings together Pacific governments, civil societies, and other partners, including youth. So youth have played an active role in this space in championing climate resilience. And one of the things we are looking at the moment is how do we realize this at the country level or at the national level. We work very closely with the Pacific Youth Council. As you know, that the Pacific Youth Councils have structures in place at the country level. And recently, the Pacific Youth Council, in partnership with SPC and the government of Fiji, hosted the youth ministerial meeting that was held in Nandi, and that was held just after the Pacific Island Forum Leaders meeting. And there were some priority areas that came out of that youth meeting. And one of the priority area was climate and disasters. So this is looking at how we can further strengthen the engagement of young people in our region, not only to advocate, but I think this has also been mentioned earlier in the discussion, is how do we actually take action on the ground. We advocate at the global level, at the regional level, but we also need to implement some of the advocacy work that we are doing at the global level. So we need to align our work as well with national government ministries. As we know, government ministries have national climate policies. Relevant youth ministries have national youth policies. So how do we align ourselves to national processes and mechanisms to ensure that youth leadership and youth processes in decision-making processes complements what's in place at the country level. But also there are regional strategies that we are also aligning to. Earlier on, my counterpart from SPC mentioned about the Pacific Youth Strategy that is currently being progressing. So we are looking at how we can also strengthen resilience as part of the youth strategy. The Blue Pacific Strategy, which was also endorsed by our forum leaders. And of course, with the support that PrEP and SPC are also providing in this space is very crucial. And in terms of, just on my last point, on how we can strengthen young people to be actively involved in decision-making processes, I think we really need to align and complement what's happening on the ground at the country level. I think I was at the Youth Ministerial just at the last day that was held in Fiji last month. It was really good to see that our young people were actively engaging with their senior officials, and they were closely supported by their youth ministers from the Pacific Island countries and territories. I believe that's the way to go. We need to work together, young people, government, civil societies, and of course with support from our crop agencies like PrEP, SPC, and the Forum Secretariat. And thank you, and I would leave it there for now. Naka.
Thank you. No, thank you, Savuloni. I think it's just been really exciting to hear from the different organizations how youth engagement has really been pushed as an initiative. But I also think it's important to see how youth engagement, youth advocacy, and also initiatives are being pushed within the Commonwealth. So I am looking forward to introducing our last, but definitely not the least speaker, Falit, who is actually from the outgoing CYC, if I stand corrected. So he is currently the Vice Chairperson-elect, I stand corrected, in policy and advocacy at the Commonwealth Youth Council. So while we are hearing from so many leaders, it's also interesting, and I'm interested to hear, what does that look like from the Commonwealth Youth Council perspective?
Thanks a lot. Am I audible? Yeah, perfect. So before we move ahead and answer the question, I'd request everyone to please have a huge round of applause once again for the entire organization. Because it takes a humongous amount of effort for the Samoan government, for all the youth volunteers for taking such good care for us, getting all of these things together, and even if without the air conditioning, getting the hall and everyone ready. And also to all the ministers who are here with us, bearing the heat as it is. Now as I answer the question, the first thing that I want to ask about from the youth space and the sustainability angle, we are approximately more than 60% of the 2.7 billion people in the Commonwealth. In the Commonwealth, again, most of the countries that we know are democracies. Now, while we are democracies and 60% of the people are below the age of 30 in democracies, that means our opinion or our ideas matter a lot in terms of how the polity is going. And even for countries which are not democracies and part of the Commonwealth, governments generally want to keep people happy or take into account people's opinion. In that respect, my question to everyone is, and I'd request you to please raise hands, is in the last elections that happened in your country, was climate change or climate action a key agenda on which people voted? Or a big segment of people, or for that matter, youth voted? Can we have the hands raised? I see only 2 or 3 hands. So while we as youth ourselves are not technically recognizing or voting on climate action as an agenda, and as one of the speakers spoke in the previous session as well, how do we expect the political systems to react to those realities, right? Whether it is the Commonwealth Youth Council or the National Youth Councils we come from, we're all working in a political system where the political realities or the governments are basically designed to respond to what the people demand. and what the people vote for. So it would not be wrong, it would technically be wrong that we continuously blame the governments while we themselves are not keeping it on a priority. So that's point number one. Second, we as Commonwealth are technically composed a major chunk of small island developing states are part of the Commonwealth. A lot of developing countries are part of the Commonwealth, and that is what majority of the Commonwealth is. Whereas, majority of the per capita emissions and the consumptions are technically happening in the global north. And there, it's even less of an agenda. We have I'm sorry to quote, but the US elections are going right now. There are multiple candidates sort of campaigning, but how many times do we hear climate change as an agenda or climate action as an agenda that the youth is technically voting for? Right, so this is something that we from the Commonwealth Youth Council or the National Youth Councils need to design and talk about. That takes us that the fight about sustainability and climate action is not merely a national fight. It's not about just a regional fight. It's something that we have to together fight at multiple levels. At the regional levels, at the municipalities or the local governments, at the state level, at the national level, and at the same time at the international level. The COP is coming up next month. And one of the key agendas being discussed about is climate financing. All of us sort of understand that the commitments that the Global North did have not been fulfilled. So this posits a responsibility on us as the Commonwealth Youth Council and youth of the Commonwealth to go out and mobilize not just ourselves, but also the youth of the Global North to demand from their governments and our governments that action needs to be taken, that commitments need to be followed through, that technology transfers that they have committed, the commitments that they've made to finance the Global South's development are taken care of. Incidentally, I was just 1 week back in Germany at the Hamburg Sustainability Conference, which was a follow-up, by the way, by the German government of the United Nations Summit of the Future in the Pact, and we had the Namibian president over there as well. And we discussed this point, and he raised it as well, that the just transition cannot happen without the Global North recognizing its efforts. And we have to mobilize them. We have to get the youth from those countries to realize the problems that we face. I still remember last year when we were in London at the Commonwealth Youth Leadership Summit, we had our friends from Nauru telling us that their entire country is technically sinking, and that's the reality of most of the countries in the Pacific and a lot of small island developing states, which a lot of countries and leaders in the Global North are not realizing. It's pertinent upon us to go out there and cop something that you guys are facilitating, to make our voices heard, to make use of platforms like Commonwealth, and ensure that the Global North and other countries recognize, and work in tandem with our government and decision makers. Our ideas should not be merely to disrupt, protest, or agitate, but to work in a productive manner. I mean, I can honestly say a lot of countries across the Commonwealth are facilitating their young leaders to come forward, and we need to recognize those allies. We have Madam Minister over here. I can tell about my friend Nicholas sitting over there, meeting him over multiple meetings, that these are the friends in different governments that we need to tap onto and ensure that the Global South gets a due voice. And something that we're also advocating in the Summit of the Future of reworking the architecture of the UN. I was talking to one of our friends, a minister, sometime back about getting more representation for the African continent, for the Pacific, for the Caribbean, for the Asian continent in these architectures. And we are trying to solve these problems, look at that macro perspective. And this would be my request to everyone in the National Youth Council, in the Commonwealth Youth Council, that we work together with our governments, we ensure that our advocacy is in the right direction, and we are able to make a lot of impact. Thank you.
Great. You know, I think, Philip, you brought up a really good point, which was just emphasizing that of the Commonwealth, 1.2 billion are youth. That is 60% of the Commonwealth. And I can comfortably say, of the percentage of youth within my own country, not even half are tapping into the potential that we have and the power we have to actually make change. I actually have a really good question I would like to ask the panel, but I also know that we have been talking for quite a while, and I do want to open up the floor to any questions that you might have for our amazing panel of guests. Just to dialogue or have conversations, please raise your hand all the way up. I am blind. Okay, I'll hand it. Does anyone have a mic for Alessandra? Okay, perfect.
Test. Talofa. My name is Alessandra and I'm from Samoa. Thank you to the panelists for the wonderful share today. Most importantly to Emma for highlighting the critical role that youth are doing in the community. I currently work as a consultant, directly working with the vulnerable communities in the Pacific Islands. And my question is really directly to the Commonwealth Youth Forum. So we'll talk today about the mitigation that we are planning for the Pacific Islands and all the countries of the Commonwealth. We're also talking about climate finance and all those things about COP coming up. We're talking about policies and strategies and how we're going to implement and what is and that. But my question is, what can we do? And we have to do it now. So what can the Commonwealth do for the Pacific Islands and all its members to address the issues of the vulnerable communities, youth, including women, and all our societies? In terms of fundings and financial...
Alessandra, could you clarify your question again, please? Just to make it shorter so that the panel could answer and respond.
No problem.
And a little louder, please.
Yeah. What can Commonwealth do for the Pacific Islands and all its member countries in terms of financial support to promote and encourage the youth-led activities and all the approaches in the Pacific Islands and all the member countries? Yes.
Is the question for me? Okay.
Ofa, perhaps you could start us off?
Thank you, Okalani, and thank you for the hard question. I'll try and attempt, but that is a very challenging question. What can we do? I was going to talk about the challenges of implementing climate change initiatives in the space, in the context of the Pacific. One is there is lack of enabling resources for us to tap into in the context of climate change, regardless if it's a project or initiative, a soft measure, or a hard technology project. One of the things that have consistently been brought up by the Pacific countries is the access to those resources and funding and support. Now with what we can do is, as I mentioned earlier in my remarks, we have programs that are here in the space, in the context of the Pacific. And also I'd like to acknowledge those statistics that you presented on. 1.8 billion of the total population of the world recorded in September 2024 is actually the youth. And 85% of that 1.8 billion is actually from developing countries. In the context of what we can do our part as a youth platform, as a regional organization, as a student in the space. I think there's a lot of energy here, and I think we need to be more collective in our push for recognition and, of course, our for commitment. The other I was also wanted to talk about is what we can do now is, this is a vehicle for accessing innovation and solutions. The youth is actually that vehicle that we can utilize and leverage to support in order for us to access innovative solutions in the context of addressing climate change. And SPREP and the Pacific Climate Change Center has a mandate in the Pacific to actually support your cause in the context of innovative solutions to climate change, but also capacity building and training. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to add?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I just want to add to the question that was asked in terms of what Commonwealth should do to mitigate the climate changes. And I want to add to your question rather. We know that climate change impacts disproportionately the developing countries. And we are responsible for a very, very few percentage of this carbon emission. Perhaps it's time for those developed countries that we know are more contributing to these actions in terms of industrialization that contributes to the climate effects. It's time that we should relook at the financing architecture in order for us to start investing more money, especially funds towards initiatives that lead to mitigate these effects of climate change. In Namibia, for example, as we speak now, we are adversely affected in terms of drought. We are facing drought. We have even declared a state of emergency. And it's time that we really relook at how do the countries that are responsible for these climate changes also assist the developing countries in terms of funding towards climate change mitigation strategies. I think by so doing, we'll be able to mitigate the challenges. But I want to conclude with my remarks by saying that as a country, as Namibia, we remain committed to meet our obligation that we have signed in terms of the United Nations Framework Convention and on climate change and the Paris Agreement. We all know that COP, and we have different strategies that we've put in place as a government to meet these obligations. And in so doing, young people obviously are at the center stage to ensure that we mitigate the challenges that we are faced with. Thank you.
Thank you for a great question. And I think bottom line what you're asking is, where's the money, right? When does Commonwealth bring you the money? And I think it's a great question, especially this year. As you've mentioned, we're going into COP29. But we need to make sure that when we go into COP29 and we're negotiating as small island developing states, our friends from developed countries who I hope are not just our friends whilst we're in Samoa, but they're going to be our friends whilst we're in Baku. Right? And we need to leverage the time that we have now. It's opportune that we're having CHOGM just before COP29 for us to be leveraging those relationships, for us to be using that Commonwealth family, that Commonwealth network to say, we want to make sure that in the declaration coming out of the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, it's more than we need to have a climate finance outcome at COP29. We need to have ambitious language, right? And we need to make sure that we are persuading our governments that that needs to be in their talking points when they're having all those bilaterals on the side. That's in their talking points. And then they're going to follow up in Baku. It's not like when we're in Baku, we're no longer Commonwealth. Of course, we have to be we're Commonwealth wherever we are. So that's one thing. But then a very specific example of what's taking place, and you know, my first point was more the political, the mobilization, that's very important. But something very concrete that's also taking place is the Commonwealth Secretariat and the Ocean Risk and Resilience Action Alliance. Together that we're collaborating and we're having a Blue Finance Working Group, right? And this Blue Finance Working Group, it is a working group under the Blue Charter. And we're looking at innovative ways to mobilize resources. You know, I mean, I don't want to go into there's no money anymore. We know the money's there. It just depends what they want to go to. But let's just accept that. But in the face of excuses like there's no money, let us turn to also innovative sources of financing. Let's look at the blue bonds. Let's look at impact investing. Let's look at what guarantees can do for us. So there is this ongoing conversations. There is a need for your governments to be open to such solutions. Of course, the need for dialogue, to ask about if there are questions, if there are concerns, worries about these solutions, to have those dialogues. But these opportunities are there, these options are there, and it is being facilitated by the Commonwealth. So
I think innovative ways of resourcing.
Yeah, I certainly believe that the money is coming if we work together as a Commonwealth. Yeah.
No, thank you. Sorry, no, I was just adding on innovative ways of finding resource is a really great way to put it, because I think with funding, there's so much funding. But are you looking in the right places? Are you asking the right people? And are you making the right friends? I think often at times when the conversation around funding comes up, it is acknowledged as a challenge within small island states because of the amount of red tape that comes. But there are ways of finding funding. You just gotta rub shoulders with the right people. But I am mindful we are running out of time. So if it's possible, I'll just take 2 more questions. I know Nick had his hand raised, and I think the gentleman in the back as well with the blue shirt, perhaps. And we'll see if we have enough time for one more. But I'm also going to request if the response be just one panel, so we can just have a few more questions as well. Thank you.
Testing. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to ask this question. So the energy transition is very complicated, and given the previous plenary sessions, we've touched on a few things such as education and different pathways to empower young people. But with the energy transition, the Pacific SIDS will be looking like last in this race to become 100% renewable or net zero. There is also an opportunity for the energy transition to transform our small economies. And given the diverse experiences of the panel, what advice would you give to young people to support the energy transition, its development, its transformation of the economies, aside from the political pathway?
Philippe?
Hello. Yeah. So I think this is a very important question in terms of identifying these pathways. When we are talking about financing and transforming our economies, and particularly about green transition, one thing need to be kept in mind, that the green transition has to be a very just transition, right? And that justice element need to be both intra-country and inter-country. Intra-country means within the communities and countries. When we are talking about transition, that marginalized communities should not be left behind. Women, young people, the different religious and racial groups, they should be taken together. And at the same time, at inter-country level, the mobilization of the resources from the global north to the global south has to happen. Now, financing technically is in 2 pathways. One, obviously, is the political pathway, where we are expecting the global north to transfer funds and technology to the global south. And the other angle is the private financing. And when you're trying to deal with the question, we have to address the elephant in the room, which is the financial architecture we are dealing with. Right now, majority of the world's wealth is in US dollars that is invested in local currencies. Now, anybody from the private sector, when he is investing or he or she is investing money, they're looking for return on investment that is generally again in US dollars. Anywhere around the globe, if we are seeing a crisis, whether it's Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Palestine, anywhere it's happening, the world's wealth again moves towards the US dollar. The exchange rate moves away, and whatever returns that you are supposed to make by the investment in the global south sort of dissipates. Unless and until we address these challenges, we are able to mobilize financing in the local currencies and able to fix this financial architecture, it would be very, very difficult to use these outside political pathways and mobilize the private financing. And without private financing, we cannot basically address the problem as a whole. That's one take.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. I think we are running out of time. But if you have a specific question for one of our leaders, I am happy to note them down and actually respond directly to you afterwards. I'm just mindful we have so many other breakout and plenary sessions to get through, but thank you so much once again to the panel of speakers today for your expertise on this knowledge. Climate change is so real and so intersectional. And as I wrap up and I finish things up, I think I actually wanted to pose a question to our audience, because I know there is going to be a breakout session where we can dialogue some more. So if you're feeling discouraged, you don't have questions now, please be reminded that there is a breakout session where you can have these conversations again. But the question is, and I'm going to be the devil's advocate for this one, but with climate change being such an important topic, right? We also have to acknowledge how intersectional socioeconomic issues are. And when you're talking about pushing initiatives like climate change, education, and resourcing and youth mobilization, we also have to acknowledge education, mental health support, financing kids and affording to eat or have food on the table is also something that youth are struggling for. And in that sense, how are we mobilizing youth to fight for climate change while also acknowledging that some youth do not have the privilege to think about climate change because of their socioeconomic challenges? And that is just my question to the floor to end us. I hope we can dialogue some more during the breakout sessions, but thank you so much.
Well done. Thank you. Fantastic job as always.
Another round of applause for our esteemed guests and our great panel.
Absolutely, and thank you to Okalani for leading us through such a thought-provoking session. It's really always so amazing to hear how our young people are innovating in these realms and how they're contributing to having us, or us having far more resilient environments. Yeah.
Now we've come to our first breakout room sessions of the forum. Our second plenary, democratic institutions. Each breakout rooms is co-facilitated by an important stakeholder, civil society member, or a partner of the Commonwealth, alongside with the support of our task force. We've just listened to engaging discussions about keeping our democratic institutions inclusive and thereby resilient. Now we welcome you all, if you have not decided yet, to each choose a breakout room on the program. Each breakout room hosts up to 50 plus facilitators, so choose wisely and choose promptly.
So what sessions are you probably wondering are happening in this breakout session? The idea behind the breakout session is to give you an opportunity to not just sit and listen to us, but to engage actively what has been shared. And so in this breakout session, we have 4 rooms. Room 1 is here on my right, which is your left, right here behind the exhibition. Room 1 will be the Pacific Youth Development Framework, supporting the Pacific youth to realize their full Pacific potential. This will be a deep dive into the design of the next 10-year strategy for youth development in the Pacific and its regional governance mechanism. So that's happening in room 1. In room 2, the conversation will be building the social media presence of youth groups in Samoa and the Pacific. We're going to launch an international social media campaign to highlight youth perspectives. This is going to be done by Brown Girl Woke. And in their 90-minute workshop, Brown Girl Woke will train representatives from youth organizations on the essential aspects of building social media, key terms when posting, how to monitor the progress of social media strategies, and how to produce a 90-second video using a mobile phone on an initiative they are implementing. So that is in room number 2, which is on my left, which is your right. I got that right, yes? And then proceeding now on to room 3, which is right behind room 2, still on your right. Room 3 is entitled, A Great Leader Can Change the World in an Instant. This is going to be a public speaking and advocacy masterclass by the ESU. It is going to be a fun and interactive session for youth delegates of the Commonwealth to bring essential debating, public speaking, and diplomacy skills to the fore. They will explore the importance of negotiation and learn how to implement effective strategies when delivering a speech. And lastly, room 4 is upstairs. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And in room 4, we're going to have Samoa Youth Solutions, entitled by the One Resilient Common Future by the Samoa Youth Solutions team. They are going to organize multiple local youth organizations and ambassadors, and the event serves as a platform for Samoan youth to showcase their initiatives across various sectors, and it will highlight Samoan youth who are making an impact in their organizations to create a resilient common future in Samoa. So you have 4 areas to choose from. Once more, room 1, the Pacific Youth Development Framework. Room 2 is the Samoa and the Pacific by Brown Girl Woke. Oh, quick change. Okay, so Brown Girl Woke is now up in room 4, which is above. They've switched, and Youth Solutions is in room 1. So 1, 2, 3, and 4 upstairs. So please, you have the next 90 minutes or so to go ahead and join a breakout session. Please don't all go to one breakout session. They can only hold around 50 persons. So if you go to a breakout session and it is at capacity, please go to another one. If you realize that another one is dwindling and you'd like to support that, please do. On a final note, before you get up, we have the bags, delegate bags. So all the international youth delegates and senior officials and ministers, please, you can start trickling towards the entrance of the building to collect your tote bag with a few goodies in there on behalf of the forum. So please, have the next hour to go to a youth forum, to go to a breakout session of your choice. And please go and visit the entrance to pick up your international tote bag. That is for our international youth delegates. And if you have any questions, please just go to any member of the task force and they will be happy. Any member of the task force will be happy to answer your questions. Okay, this is the part where you get up and move, guys.